What's up, guys? Today, I have to bring you another video here. I mean, we got a little bit of a reveal today. We got some cards from Freljord, Ionia, and Bilgewater, and they were just too spicy for me not to break these down. They're not really going to fit into the other reveals, as we know we're getting a champion from Targon and from Noxus. So I figured I would just take this short little video here just to review the 7 cards that we got, 7-ish. And they're pretty spicy. We got 2 landmarks that are really interesting. We got some big units and some pretty important things. So I'm going to take this video as a second to break down those few little cards here. I might jump back and forth between Runeterra, the live collection, to see what cards could be altered, or affected by this release of these cards. And we'll just kind of have a good time, jump back and forth. So if you are here for the first time, welcome, and leave a like, subscribe, and leave a comment and do all those good things. So here we have in our Discord, we have a whole section where we just post any of the images that come out, either from, again, shout out to Cosmic here, or just from Runeterra themselves, so we all can just talk about the spoilers. But just to start, right at the top left, we have Ionia. We have their landmark, finally. Beautiful art here as well for this one. It's the Monastery of Hyrana, and it's a landmark 3 cost, so another 3 cost landmark on top of the one we previously broke down from P&Z. And it has a round start ability, create a Sanctuary in hand. Now, Sanctuary is the card right to the right. Again, this has no icon below it, so this is just created from this card, and you can't be main decked, but it's a 1-cost burst spell that recalls an ally. And it can't be cast in combat or in response to a spell. So it's the same exact speed as Gems or Lulu's help picks. So it's the same exact speed as those cards. So it's a burst card, but it can't be cast during combat or as a response like to the stack. So it does have like an interesting 4th speed compared to fast, slow, and burst. There's like this extra one here, so it's a little bit confusing, but essentially it just can't be cast within combat or as a response to the stack. But it's very interesting. I mean, it's a 1-cost burst that will recall an ally. So, I mean, right off the bat, that's a lot of tempo loss for this. You have to pay 3 to even put this landmark down, and then next turn you have the ability to recall an ally. So you have to really look and think, okay, well, what can take advantage of self-recall that powerfully, and that importantly. And honestly, I don't see a whole lot right now. There are some cards that definitely do take a good effect with it, and I'll go through some from Ionia, but in general, for 3 mana, and then you don't even get the ability to do this until the following turn, and it has the altercation if you can't do it as a response to them targeting a unit. It's a big sell for me, so I'm not sure about the viability of this, but let's go through real quick some of the cards that we could actually break down from this. And obviously most of those are going to be in Ionia. So obviously Yasuo, when you stun or recall an enemy, you deal 2 to it. That's his text, but his level of ability is when you stun or recall 5+ units. So that will essentially level up Yasuo quicker if you're recalling your own units. So there is the added benefit of that. There's obviously the added benefit of playing anything that has an additional summon effect. You could just do that as well, but I'm kind of, like this, say, when it's summoned, give it elusive. Yeah, there's an added benefit of that to anything that has a summon effect, but, there's cards from that from every region, but I'm really looking for things that are really particular to this benefit. And, Feyblade's definitely one of those. As you're recalling other things, this thing will get larger, so that's pretty decent, sure. Highwaymen's okay. Again, it's just another when a summoned effect, so it's not anything super, super strong. You see, the good thing about Retreat was you got to recall it, but you got a return in response, which was allow you to play the unit back. So it has that benefit. You have this when it's summoned. So again, if you really want to get an extra one, one of the main ones is after you concussive palm, you play this 3/2 unit, but when this unit is recalled, you transform that card in your hand back to a concussive palm. And this is probably the biggest one that I want to talk about, because we haven't seen this happen a whole lot of times. Again, self-recalling things typically didn't really fit into the control archetype anyway, but if there is this new archetype that they're trying to push here, it could fit, and there's definitely an interesting, loop of, okay, well, I concussive palmed on their offensive turn, and now when they have another offensive turn, I'm going to have another concussive palm, because every round start, I'm creating one of those. So looping a bunch of concussive palms is extremely strong for a control deck. I mean, you can really punish your opponent by just constantly having a stun and a unit, and then when you eventually need that unit for blocking, you can just throw the blocker out there. So that one's pretty legit. Obviously, like I said, any play effect, like anything with Allegiance, is also something that you could use for that. And then the last things that are really here are Noxus. And there's some different stunning techniques. One of the big ones is the Legion General here. So when he's summoned, he gets +1/+1 for everything that you've stunned or recalled, including your own units. So if you recalled a bunch of your own units, he will be a big beefy boy with fearsome. He's gonna be a 5/5. It could be he's gonna be a 5 cost. It could be a 10/10. He's gonna be thick, and he's gonna have fearsome. So there's obviously some synergy there with the stun package already in Noxus. They have a few other cards that stun, including the Arachnoid Sentry and things like that. So there's definitely a workings. We've seen Yasuo get paired with Noxus plenty as well. So there's definitely a workings of that. Now, it's yet to be seen if Riven comes out and she's very stun and recall focused, which could be the case, and that's the Noxus champion coming out. If that is the case, then I could see where this deck was, where they were going with this, and they could use that. But again, like I said, it's just a bit pricey for me. 3 cost round start to get this. I mean, there's definitely some benefits. I just don't see a ton right off the bat. So we're going to have to wait and see what else we get. But that was one of the Ionia cards. So it's a pretty spicy card. So we're moving over to the right there. We have the Boom Ship. So Boom Ship is a 3 cost slow spell from Bilgewater. And it's deal 1 to a unit. And then you summon powder kegs equal to the amount of damage dealt. So obviously, 3 costs for 1 damage at slow speed is pretty, rancid value. It's a really terrible value. But, however, getting to summon a keg is interesting. It's really like this only has increasing value as you have more kegs or more ways to increase this thing's damage. So let's just take for the example, if you do have 2 kegs out, or have a keg out and you cast a spell, you'll then be doing 2 damage, and then you'll summon 2 powder kegs. Your kegs will blow up with the 2 damage that you did, and then you'll summon 2 powder kegs in response because you did that. So that's interesting to a degree. I really hate slow speed personally, and that is going to affect this a lot. It can't deal damage to the Nexus, so it's only to a unit, which is also limiting for this card. There's a lot of ways to play around it, etc., etc. But it's still interesting. It's a fun card that really makes your brain think about some deck building possibilities. And, just to switch back to the game real quick as well, there are other things that boost damage besides just kegs. Obviously, we have things like the Funsmith now, which is a 4-drop, but the Funsmith is all your spells deal 1 extra damage. So obviously, if you don't even have any kegs, but you do have a Funsmith out, you can at least get 2 kegs in response. And, base value is 1 damage in a keg, but again, for 3 mana, at slow speed, doesn't seem super strong. There is plenty of keg love in Bilgewater, so I could see it possibly, finding some play here and there. And obviously the Dreadway will double the damage if you have a keg in a Dreadway. You'll summon a lot more kegs. And then there's always the super janky stuff where you put like Unyielding Spirits on kegs. But again, I just can't see this being super viable, having a lot of potential. It's very interesting. Both these first 2 cards are very interesting in terms of deck building, and they offer weird options. But just right now with what we currently have, there's not a whole lot that I can see them fitting into. But that being said, that could always change. Third is probably one of the cards I'm most excited about here. We have the Scar Grounds, which is a Freljord's first landmark, 3 cost. When an ally survives damage, grant it +1/+0 and tough. So grant, again, is a permanent gain. They have +1 attack and tough after they take damage, and that's a 3 cost. So that card has my whole Discord freaking out, and has, quite frankly, a lot of people extremely excited. And, let me switch back again and take you through why it has so many people excited. So there's this whole archetype in Freljord that doesn't see a whole lot of play. And it's with a lot of the play that it has seen is with Vlad, but it's all the other Scarmother stuff. And obviously the name of this landmark, it tends to be why it's giving, that type of buff. But obviously here, a unit that's a 6-drop who's a 3/8, and wants to be self-inflicted damage so it can get larger, giving it even more damage and granting it tough is pretty massive. And she is not the only unit here. There's also a 3-drop version of that as well. When it survives damage, it gets additional attack, which is solid. There's even a 1-drop version, all solid, and other cards in Freljord that want to take damage. So, we've seen Braum used to be a 1/5. He got buffed for a second. They reduced that because him having 1 attack is vicious. So him having 1 attack and tough is pretty crazy. Now, tough can maybe be a little counterintuitive with his level up condition, but still very strong. Giving him +1 attack is pretty massive. So there's a lot of things in Freljord that once they survive damage, And when it does survive damage, it gets bigger. And that's a cool archetype that we haven't seen a whole lot of yet. And there's also things just with regeneration. You can even just take this troll here, for example. He's dealing 1 to everything, so that will kind of set all that whole vibe up. And the other thing that it really appeals to is a lot of the Crimson stuff, which we've seen Vlad get a ton of different reworks. But when Vlad has people survive damage, he does level up. And like I said, we've seen so many different things in this package with the Crimson Disciple here. When it survives damage, it gets to deal damage to the opposing Nexus, the Crimson Curator, and so on. There's a lot there that a lot of people are really excited about. And, rightfully so, because that's an archetype that's kind of been slacking for a while. And this is a really cool card to add to that. Really, really cool card to add to that archetype. I think it's one of my more, interesting landmarks that I've seen, especially as of late. Out of these 3, this is the one that excites me the most. It opens up an old archetype. Just with 1 card, you open up an old archetype to come back and breathe some life into it. Now, I don't think it's going to be extremely competitively viable, but it's going to be exciting to build with. I'm extremely excited to build with this card. Next here we have Homecoming. This is another Ionia card. It is a fast speed 5-cost spell. It recalls an ally unit or landmark, and in turn you get to recall an enemy unit or landmark. So that's send back to hand, in case you're wondering. But super interesting. You can, out of the gate, yes, again, you want to look for things that have a benefit when you're recalling your own units, sure. And you can get that use, but as well as, if you also recall something that you want to recall, but at the same time recalling an enemy unit, that's very powerful. And the best way to highlight this again is to switch back to the game menu here and go to Ionia. But really, what we had was a card called Will of Ionia, and it used to cost 4, it now costs 5. It just recalls a unit. This was used as a very strong anti-tempo card, because you would just recall their 6-drop, recall their 8-drop, recall anything that they buff, and you would just keep setting them back. They'd have to keep playing that unit over and over again. It was really good at 4 mana. At 5 mana, it's seen very, very little play, and it has not been very impressive as of late. So this card costing 5, this new card, and we can switch back over again, Homecoming costing 5 is interesting. It's very expensive as well, and you're really going to have to. It is a landmark removal, so they did give away for Ionia to have a landmark removal card. They said every region would have landmark removal. So it's interesting that it has it in the form of recalling, but the price is a little heavy. Obviously, the first thing I think of when I'm maximizing value with this would be as a response to a removal spell, right? Say they get excited one of your champions, you use Homecoming, so you get to dodge the spell, keep the champion alive in your hand, while also sending one of their units back to their hand. That's a lot of value. I really think that's super strong and where it's going to shine. Just, it has a lot of, you can play around that a lot, right? They can cast another spell and kill that unit, and now this whole spell fizzles. So now you spent 5 mana to do nothing. There's just a lot of maneuverability around this card. But that being said, it's still going to be pretty annoying when things do bounce. And if we do get more Ionia recalling support, which we might be getting, as they're hinted out here with this landmark, could be interesting going forward. Next, we have probably the cutest of the cards. We got the Wiggly Bubblefish. This card's super interesting. 6-drop Bilgewater card that's a 3/1, so awful stats, so it's going to do something weird. It reduces its cost by 1 for each spell you've cast this game. Okay, and when I'm summoned, create a 1-cost spell from your regions in hand. So it will randomly create a spell from whatever 2 regions you're playing or whatever 1 region you're playing, and it is an elusive 3/1 for 6. Now, ideally, you're going to play a bunch of spells, and it will be a 3/1 for ideally 0, or ideally 1 or 2 after you play a bunch of spells. So it's pretty interesting. I mean, I'm not 100% sure of the viability of here, and I guess I will switch over real quick just to show some of the cards that do have some synergy with this. They're also in Bilgewater, and it's nice to see some synergy here with the 1-drops, but Fizz, obviously, the fish type character, he wants to cast spells. When he casts 6+ spells, he levels, and he does elusive things as he's leveling. So there's obviously some weird, and the 1-cost thing as well. There is a lot of 1-cost cards that do something important, and you have Jailbreak and Parlay. You also have Jettison, which is a sad thing for that. But you have a lot of these interesting 1-cost things, and then you have this whole Jagged Taskmaster Plunder. One cost allies cost 1 or have +1 attack, which is interesting, and you have this, which creates a random 1-cost spell in your hand. So there's ways to do things that are very spell heavy, and then some people use Mind Meld in a Fizz and Lee Sin deck where you cast a bunch of spells, then you make them all powerful, and it hasn't been the most competitive deck, but it is interesting, and I like we were just talking on the podcast that we want to see some of this elusiveness that Bilgewater has get to shine, and I'm really happy that they're adding another elusive unit to Bilgewater for that reason. But it's a very interesting one. You're gonna have to play it in a deck with a lot of spells to get this thing down to a 0 or 1 cost unit, because for a 3/1, yes, it's elusive. It's just going to get removed very quickly. Finally, we have the 8 cost Freljord card, which is pretty insane. It That Stares. Such a weird name. They have all weird names for these giant creatures, but it is a play effect, which is a skill. That's the icon next to play, so it will go on the stack, so it is deniable. It says obliterate all landmarks, which is every landmark on the board will get removed from the game. Or you can deal 2 to all other units. So essentially it can come on the board, avalanche the entire board, so deal 2 to everything on your side and everything on your opponent's side, not the nexuses, or you can obliterate both landmarks on both sides. You can kill all landmarks. So this is Freljord's landmark removal. It's very strong. It's a massive card. This is a very solid card in general. I mean, the fact that you just have a built-in avalanche on an 8-cost unit is very interesting for ramp decks that want to go late. You can just play that, kind of clear the board. If you can get this down early, if you've ramped 1 or 2 mana for the game, and you can play this on a turn 6 or 7, 2 damage might be enough to clear some of the straggling little units that are causing problems still to you. And if not, it's going to at least help set up a lot of kills if you have another Avalanche or Withering Wail or something in hand. But this has the added effect of being able to destroy all landmarks, which is great into some matchups, especially if you're playing into landmarks that can win the opponent the game, like the springs. Then that's a really good thing to have. Just to highlight real quick, the last thing about this, it's really just what this creature is, and it's pretty funny. There's a ton of these in Freljord. There's these big creatures of She Who Wanders, so you can see this massive creature, and they're all actually this guardian as well. But you have that, They Who Endure. It's these very interesting creatures, and if you were just wondering where that came from, on top of that, there's even Bailey in the shot, which is essentially an it that stares. So that's pretty much the breakdown here, guys. Like I said, I'm very excited for all these cards. I wanted to do a quick little video just because I find them all super interesting. Even the Ionia ones that I think might not be that powerful, or the Bilgewater ones that might not be that viable, they're still super interesting. Like the Burble Fish really makes me want to play a Fizz deck for the first time in a while. The Self Recall got me thinking about all of the old Yasuo decks I used to play, and then the Scargrounds completely reset all of that Scarmother stuff and the Scarthanes and the Vlad support. And it all just opens up these old archetypes, and they're doing it very well just by adding 2 cards to each of these regions, and that's all these regions are going to get for this whole release. They're only going to get these cards for these 3 regions, but it's still super interesting cards, and I'm very excited about it. So guys, if you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe, help us out. We are aiming to hit big numbers just so we can become a league partner one day and then give away a bunch of stuff. And if you're wondering about giveaways, we do a ton of those on Twitter, so make sure to follow us on Twitter. And for more content, stay tuned right here. Bye.